Oh, today I'm joined by Jemma Gawned. Gemma is a modern medicine woman, retreat leader, healer, and ceremonialist, specializing in energy healing and spiritual guidance, offering deep transformational work globally, from Australia to Bali, Ibiza, Peru, and more. Gemma's approach, Anchoring the Light, emphasizes the connection between mind, body, and spirit, aiming to facilitate deep healing and inner harmony for her clients and empower others to remember their true divine nature. Her mission is to assist others to become creators of their reality and transform their own lives in the way it has profoundly transformed her own. Thank you so much for joining us, Gemma. It's taken us a hot minute to get here, but here we are.
Thank you so much, Nadine. I listen to that bio and I'm like, oh, because people often ask me, what do you do? And I'm like, how long have you got? I don't even know how to describe it. So it's always nice to hear it back because I'm like, oh yeah, that's there. Or there could be something else there as well. But thank you so much for having me on. It's great to
Oh,
be.
no worries. I'm looking forward to getting into our conversation. And obviously there is a lot in that intro. So it's like, how much time have we got to talk about all of those things? We'll, um, we'll try and stay on topic. I've got a whole bunch of things that we can talk about, but obviously we'll just kind of see where the conversation leads us. I have to admit that when I've been, following you on socials, a little bit of YouTube, and you do seem to have a lot going on. Um, it's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
And just going to start with this before we get stuck into anything else, because I think that for many people, women especially, we feel like we're run ragged, and you've got seemingly a lot of stuff going on. Like you travel, you're running retreats, and I noticed you've got an Airbnb, and you just got married, and you're doing doing all of these amazing things. You've just started a 1 year program with a mentorship, and it's like you just still seem so relaxed and in the moment, so present. Like whereas a lot of people, you kind of feel that pressure and energy. How do you do that?
Oh, that's a really beautiful question. And I'm always one of the things I think that guides me through life the most and really is the basis of what we would call shamanic work, means that we are just so in tune with synchronicity and nature and listening and being led and guided by feeling, but also by signs and by charm. And just this morning, just before I came here, actually, I walked into a shop here in Byron Bay and they asked if I was here on a break. And I said, and I've been asked that 3 times this morning, which is super interesting because I'm like, someone's telling me, need a break, need a break. But my response was, and it's true, is that it's finding the moments of stillness in between, being in joy of what it is you're doing or offering. If I'm not in joy with it, then I don't do it. Right? If it feels good and if it feels like, of course, there's always that initial excitement and passion when you're starting a project of some kind, but there's always this kind of feedback loop, I guess, that's happening of, do I feel contracted or do I feel open? If I'm feeling open, then I know that the timing is right. I know that my energy is right. I know that the people are going to come. And then it's sort of, for me, because I don't have a kind of regular lifestyle in terms of going to a job and and then I get to go home and switch off, or I get to take 4 weeks or 8 weeks holiday a year and switch off, or whatever it is. It kind of comes with me everywhere I go. So it has to become a part of your lifestyle. So those moments and those times of self-care, they've got to be woven into every single day, and there has to be moments of every day. So it's always finding the balance. And I understand it because I've been a woman in business for many, many years, and I do have that natural. I'm very Vata, if you know anything about the Ayurvedic doshas. So I'm very, there's a lot of creativity, and a lot of us, I think, that have, I call it idea-aria. We're constantly getting downloaded with the ideas. And what I'm really careful of is not to say yes in coffee moments. I call coffee moments those moments where you're feeling, where you've either literally had a cup of coffee or a cacao or something and you're feeling all the inspiration, or when you're ovulating and you've got tons of energy, it's like just take a breath, sit back, let everything settle, feel into how it's going to feel in the long term. And everything that I do now, and actually the pandemic years really taught me this, was about creating space. It's so for me, even though it kind of seems like there's a lot going on, there's a lot of space in between. And actually my mantra for this year is do less, affect more. That's really what I'm sort of working towards myself for my own personal goal.
Cool. I've kind of wanted to open with that because it's just, I think it's a desire for so many people, and knowing that you coach. Do you coach men and women, or women specifically?
No, men and
Men
women.
and women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, it's that desire for so many women, but it can kind of feel like almost unobtainable to have that balance. I work in the fitness industry, and often when there's a lot going on, the first thing that gets cancelled is the training session sort of thing. It's like people just don't feel like they have the capacity. So you just seem to embody something quite different, like energetically, along with all of the things that you're doing.
Thank you. I went through a really severe burnout because I had 17 years of it was severe, pretty severe stress, I would say. A lot of joy, a lot of fun, and a lot of creative energy as well. But you start to also learn, I think, when you're, there's a difference between obstacles that are put on your path for you to grow and, move through and expand into something more. Everything's expanding us into something more, of course. But if you continually getting Mount Everest in your way and you have to keep climbing and climbing and climbing, then it's a time for us to actually take a look at what we're doing and ask ourselves, am I out of alignment with my true path and purpose? And sometimes it takes a lot of a cataclysmic or some cataclysmic events to get you to the point where you actually realize, holy cow, I'm actually off path here and I haven't been listening, and my soul and its infinite wisdom and the universe and its infinite wisdom is now literally pulling the rug from under me to point me in a different path. And I think over time that process becomes more and more conscious. To begin with, we're just either moving with the energy or being driven by whatever it is we think we need to be driven by, whatever that might be. Could be a gazillion different things. And we're really not, we might think we're listening, but we're really not. I call it the feather, the brick and the Mack truck. So first of all, the universe, your high self, will come and it will tickle you with the feather, and it will give you, you start to feel exhausted, for example. You might be feeling some burnout. You might be feeling that you're at that point where you are going to explode, and one little more thing is going to break the camel's back and you're going to lose your shit. It could be those kinds of things. Then you don't listen, you keep pushing, and then comes the brick. And the brick could be in the form of a flu or, a stomach bug or something that takes you out just for long enough, but not quite enough for you to actually get it. And then if you still miss the cue, then unfortunately, sometimes it needs to happen that the Mack truck comes in and that pulls the rug out from under you. I mean, we got it, again, just back in those pandemic times, we got a massive Mack truck moment. I don't know whether we, I think half the population of the planet got the lesson, and the other half just probably sort of went back to worse than it was before. But there was a massive shift. Something had to be done. So for me, I stay very attuned and aware of what's happening in my life, and I'm always fine-tuning it so that I don't need to call in those Mack truck moments. And how do you do that? You can see by the way your nervous system is regulated or dysregulated. Adding, there's a few things that I have in my day that are really non-negotiable. It doesn't really, if they had to, then maybe, once one day or something I might miss it. But there's some things that are just non-negotiable in the day. And for sure, what that does is that there's kind of two, I wish I had my medicine cup here. There's two analogies of the cup. There's the one where you want to leave some room in the cup, right? So the cup should only ever be no more than three quarters full of stuff. So you've always got a quarter in there left so that you can actually feel like you have the strength, the energy, the resilience, and you can breathe into the things that you want or need to do. And then the other side of it is that you want to make sure that your cup is filled with good stuff. So we need to do something on a regular basis to empty the cup out completely so that we can then refill it with the next level of awesomeness that's going to really serve us. And I think that's where, you know, retreat experiences come in, or I'm actually doing a fast for 2 days at the moment on a physical level. That's the emptying of the cup and the refilling. So to give yourself those times, it's really, self-care is not a luxury anymore. It is a necessity, you know, that we must be generous with ourselves and give ourselves that. And then, you know, we have the energy and the vitality and more so the feeling of space to be able to follow our dreams and put our focus on the things that we enjoy. And just to know that there are always going to be times where you will feel like you're going to explode. And especially now, because of the amount of photonic light that we have hitting the planet. I don't know if you have heard about the X-class and M-class solar flares. They began in 2018.
A little bit, yeah. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want to get you off track, sorry.
No, it's all a part of it. And I think it's really helpful for people to understand what's happening from the outside kind of into, you know, what it's awakening, because you may notice that you are feeling even more sensitive or more easily hitting that point of overwhelm than you would usually. And that is because we are being catapulted literally into an awakening process, right? Which has been happening on the planet for a long time. But it's like, okay, it's like the cosmic guardians up there are like, okay, the rubber's hitting the road here, kids. We need to hurry it up.
Here we go.
You're just taking too long. So we're going to send you some photonic light to, you know, and this, it's not woo-woo. Like you can jump onto any space channel, NASA, and these are measurable, they call them solar flares, and they're frequencies of photonic light that are emanating bursts of radiation that are coming out of the sun. And we've always had them, but they started to really ramp up in 2018. So we started to first have these M-class solar flares, and they kind of measure them like they do earthquakes on the Richter scale. So, you know, they have measurements or ratings. So the M-class is sort of like the mid to high. And then we started getting the X-class. Now, interestingly, during 2020, they stopped. And then they started again. And in the last, say, 12 months, we've had more X-class solar flares that are measuring at the very, very top of the Richter scale, almost as high as you can possibly get. We've had more in the last 12 months than we've ever had recorded on the planet since they've been able to measure them. So if you think of it like as what it's doing to the Schumann resonance of the planet, which is the electromagnetic field of the planet, is measurably, it is changing, increasing the frequency, it's raising the frequency, the base frequency of the planet. So we are here on the Earth and we're kind of like lightning rods, you know, like when the lightning strikes, so that it doesn't take the power out in the house, it hits the lightning rod to ground the energy in the earth. So, you know, if you think about our circuit breakers in our house, if our house was to get hit by lightning, the circuit breaker would go off, right? Because it's grounding the energy, and it's in our bodies, we're kind of being put flat to give our physical bodies an opportunity, a chance to catch up with the enormous amount of very strong, very high frequency energy that we have never received in these human spacesuits before. You know, so it is changing our vibration, it is changing our electromagnetic field, And what happens as a kind of a symptom or a side effect of that are things like you can feel highly anxious, the heart rate can be going, a lot of people tinnitus in the ears, vision disturbances, feeling like you're racing, and then oof, flat, and you can barely sit up. Like the wipeout can be really debilitating. You might be having sleep disturbances, whether it be that if your sleep is normally good, it's all over the place, or the other way around where you just can't wake up, so, and then even flu-like symptoms, a lot of the things, it's interesting for me, I get them in bouts of these weird and wacky. I had from January until June last year, waking up in the middle of the night with my hands in these strange mudras stuck, clawed.
Oh, wow.
And like cramped, right? Now the mind, the physical mind, wants to figure out what the hell's going on, right? So it starts to look at everything, your nutrition, your supplements, your habits, your what's going on, inflammation, blah, blah, blah. And yes, that's good, of course, because we're holistic. So it's always, I'm really big on the physical body. So it's very important to take care and see what's happening in the physical body. But I knew that on the level of energy that there was a massive recalibration of some kind going on. So it was kind of fascinating, as the same time being a little bit freaky. And when it actually stopped, I would notice that whenever I would go into a temple, because I live most of my year in Bali, whenever I would go into a temple or onto a mountain, and if I slept there, I wouldn't get it. Right? It was like something like being in because these places are very, very high frequency places. So it was like they were taking it for me. And this continued until I went to the Temple of Tiwanaku in Lake Titicaca. I took a group there last year. It's a Lemurian temple, an ancient Lemurian temple. And I was directed when I went inside to sit in front of their sun god, which is Wiracocha, and I sat in front and my hands started doing these crazy things, and it was like I was being electrified, like the light that was coming out of this thing was like, whoa! I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but this is my world. So this is what was happening for me. And then all of a sudden it stopped and I heard the words complete, and from then on, nothing, finished. So how do you explain this? It's like I was doing all the things, taking care of all the things, but on some level, we're just being called to trust the process because it is awesome, and where it's leading us to is absolutely divine, and it is already incredibly beautiful, but it can be a little bit wobbly along the way. So part of, for me, what I love through the work that I do is just to encourage and help people to understand that they're not alone, that however it's playing out for you in your own individual story, at home, with work, we can tend to think, that it's my stuff. This is, humans, we love to own things and make it mine. But actually it's very collective. It's happening right across the planet for so many different people. And we're becoming more and more conscious of it. So now it's to become more and more conscious of not just our individual process. We work through that, but we're also aware that we're a part of a collective process. And that's the process that I think that we're in as we sort of ascend.
Wow. You've given us a whole bunch of things that we could talk about. And I'm totally down with all of that. I love all of the things that you've said. Let's go right back to your own personal journey within this, because obviously you're now, you're having an amazing experience, and you're now sharing that with others and teaching others how they can embody more of this. What would we say? I haven't got the word.
Yeah, I think it's just
life, consciousness, awareness, awakening, all of the things. But you haven't always been here, and you mentioned awakening, and I wanted to talk to you about that and like what that means. And you talked about the crisis, and I had that on my list as well. You the feather, the brick, and the truck. Because I'm really curious about all of that and how that unfolds for people and how it unfolded for you. Because you talked about, being in business and the burnout that you experienced. What was going on for you, and what was the point where you said, what needs to change? Something needs to change, something needs to shift. And how did that come about? Was it a radical, like, pack everything up, go to the mountains situation and do ayahuasca? Or was it a gradual unfolding?
Yeah, for me, it was a gradual unfolding. It felt like a gradual unfolding. But when I look back in retrospect, it was probably more punctuated with big moments than what I realized at the time. Because I think, there's, I was reflecting on this the other day, like, and I think this is true. Well, I know this is true for everybody. Like, as I'm saying this, perhaps your listeners, your community can remember back when they were a child and had an awareness of themselves looking out at the world through their body, right? That part of us doesn't change, does it? Oh, it's so beautiful. I remember being 4 and in the back seat of the car, being bored like kids are, and looking out and dreaming in a lot of what I do now, actually. And I remember the daydreams, and they were abstract. But even back then, we were manifesting, because we were the cicadas have just...
Oh, don't worry. I've had them here they've just gone, but they were mad for a couple months.
For me, this is an awesome sign, because it's the middle of the day and it's not normal for them to come. So, I'm talking about that power that we have as creators, and now they're going down again. See, this is the synchronicities. They're always coming to guide us. Anyway, digressing, it's so beautiful. But the first major event, I think, for me was in my early 20s. I had a cancer scare, quite a big one. And I'd been living a pretty unhealthy lifestyle up until then. And it was very lucky that I caught it, because they said if I had have done what the doctors told me and waited 3 years for another pap smear, I probably wouldn't have made it to my 25th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
So that was the first. It was a cervical cancer thing, and I've been completely free of that ever since. But I had a very strong realization back then that I needed to make changes in my life, but that the changes couldn't be something that I just did for a short period of time, like a diet. Because I watched my beautiful mum, and I'd watched her yo-yo, like a lot of women of her generation, swinging in and out of diets and stuff. And I thought, no, that's not the way. It has to become a lifestyle. So I started immersing myself, researching, reading, exploring. There's so much more information available for us now, of course, with the internet. Back then it was all in books, and learning about the body, learning about different diets, learning about detoxes, trying different detoxes, then eventually moving into fasting and cleansing. This is like 20 odd years ago, so it wasn't as normal as what it was now. And then I think that as the more crystalline or cleaner the body became, then the desire to connect to spirituality came along with that. And so when I was about 25, I started a meditation practice called Vedic meditation, or transcendental meditation, people might know it as, which is a beautiful practice, very simple, using a mantra that you just focus on silently. And through that practice, I began seeing colour. And this was something that I had all the time as a kid. It was challenging for me as a child sometimes, because I would see a lot of spirits. I started teaching myself, even at the age of 6 and 7, how to close portals. I used to do these rituals before I went to bed last night, and I remember them so clearly. Nobody ever knew that I did it, because they would have, I felt like I would have been judged. So I just knew what I had to do, and I did it, because I didn't, like most of us, grow up in a family. They'll think I'm crazy. So I didn't grow up in a family that kind of knew how to support that. But of course, as we do, we push all of that stuff down, right? If we've, as children, that's kind of knocked out of us. And so when this meditation practice started to really open everything up, that became my medicine, you know, and it was something that I just was very, very committed to. I used to do 20 minutes twice a day, longer on a Sunday. And I was still in my world of working in fashion, and then I ended up in TV, and then I ended up with my own business because I thought that I had all grand dreams of having this beautiful cosmetics company. I had been offered a big deal with Max Factor, actually. They wanted to pay me a lot of money to put my name on a product, and whatever it was within me said, no, you do it yourself. I don't want anything, because I had a really strong ethics as well. I didn't want to be working with anything that was animal tested or that was not being made in Australia. So I went off and I did my own thing, and that was such a massive initiation. I mean, that really went from 2001 through till 2010. It was like 10 years with that business of being completely green, having no idea what I was doing. Being very good at the front end, as most entrepreneurs are, but terrible at the back end with finances and all the rest of it. And I ended up through that process calling in, because I really did, I manifested some very dodgy, shady people along the way that really could, you know, they thought they were on a meal ticket with me. And long and the short of it is, without going into the big long story, 10 years later, I fought. Oh my God, did I fight for that brand? It went down, it went back up, I reinvented it, I did not stop. I kept going. I was working so hard and loving it as well. And then at the very end of it all, the people I thought I could trust that came on board, but stupidly I didn't sign anything because I trusted them, because I'd known them for many years. He was my accountant, and they basically ran with $1 million and left me holding everything.
Oh my God.
And so 3 days before we were due to do a national rollout into Myers, David Jones came up, Priceline, huge $1 million rollout. They said, sorry, not interested anymore. and they took off and left me holding the whole lot. So this was on the front page of the newspapers. It was at the same time I'd been seeing quite a well-known actor in Australia. We broke up. So my dad was diagnosed with a terminal illness. So, and the headline was, she's Gawned, because my last name is Gawned. So it was that level of hugeness. But the amazing thing is throughout that period of time, I had some level of awareness, even in the toughest, hardest moments. I had some level of awareness that this was happening for me, not to me. So even though, I practice and I'm not saying that there weren't days that I was fully in victim mode and saying, why me? Of course there would have been, but largely I was retraining myself to understand that this is taking me somewhere, this is preparing me for something, this is making my spiritual practice stronger. My spiritual practice is why I'm able to get through this. And I would have days where I would be in a completely, what I would probably say, a fully awakened state. You know, there was like 3-day blocks of time where it was like I was puppeteering everything and totally disattached, is that a word? Totally not attached to the stress or not attached to anything that was happening on, and just being able to see the game of it, you know. So and during this time and from that, I started to understand that there were a lot of people out there, women back then was my main focus, that were also having these experiences but didn't have any support. For me, I'm a very strong person. I don't mind being the leader. I'm in the Gene Keys, I'm a line 5, I'm a Leo rising. So it's like, if sometimes it feels lonely out here, but it's okay. You know, I'm not gonna go backwards to hold myself back for somebody else. That's I don't know, I've always thankfully had that naturally, or thankfully, and sometimes it's been very lonely, but you know, thankfully I've always kind of had that. So I was like, even though people were calling me crazy and thought that I was woo-woo and I was losing friends, and that does happen when you start to wake up, because people can be afraid of it, or whatever reason, like if all of a sudden you don't want to do the same things, they can feel like they're being judged, or can be a gazillion different things. But ultimately all that's happening is that you're shifting in your frequency, and one of two things is going to happen. The things around you are either going to shift and come with you, or they're going to drop away. And that goes for everything, whether it's relationships, careers, businesses, everything comes actually under the habits. It's all in that category. But yeah, so I really went through a solid year and a half of what people would call now a spiritual awakening. Back then, I did not give it that term. I didn't even think about that that's what it was. I was just enjoying the ride of the exploration of what was unfolding, and weird stuff was going on, big stuff. I'm talking like waking up and there's beings standing at the end of the bed, and I'm having conversations with other realms. Like, it was huge. So in that period of time, I also learned, and through a very dear mentor that I'd found, who taught me, actually, I don't remember any of it, actually, but I went and did Reiki with her. She was a Reiki grandmaster. I work with energy, but I don't work with Reiki, but it's beautiful. It's a modality. But that's what I sort of sought out at that time. And she became a mentor. She's now 80. And she told me years later that her dharma, her guidance for her time here on earth, was to have a handful of younger women that she would mentor, not for any money. She just was there for me through that. So through my own exploration and through her guidance, I was able to learn to understand how to navigate through those realms and through all of that energy and through those things that were going out. And I started to really enjoyed walking between the worlds, meaning, I never felt like I needed to go and, I've certainly had periods of retreat. I live in conscious communities for sure. Like I moved up, I lived in Byron Bay, I live in Bali, I live in conscious communities, I do. But my passion has always been to walk between the worlds. So not to float off into spirit, and not to be in the 3D matrix of the grind, but be able to be somewhere in between, to merge those things and make it accessible to people. So it's gradual, and I think if for me, and what I would encourage people to look at it as, is an adventure. It's like when you were a kid and you had those choose your own adventure novels, where you could pick a different page and pick a different ending. It's like that, and it's super fun when you start looking at it like that, and you start playing with how you can shape your reality, through tending to your inner world and your inner state, and you see how easily so things come. For somebody that has lost 2 businesses because you think I would learn this the first time, did not. I learnt most, but there was a bit that I was missing, and that's not to maybe get people involved. And for me, some people are very good with that. For me, it didn't work for me at all. And my second business, I actually gave it away. So I walked away. So the first time I lost my house, I lost everything, gained everything, but materially everything went. Second time, same thing. I was already on my path doing what I'm doing now. So my path had already changed, and it took me 4 years to unravel from my business. But I ended up giving my business away and walking away with nothing in 2017. And now the 2 little villas that I've just built in Bali, I've not had to borrow any money to do this. And I don't even know how that's happened. It doesn't actually, when you write it down on the paper, it doesn't make sense. What I can tell you is that I took all of the things that I knew about myself and learned. I gave myself a lot of space to feel into how I wanted my life to look, and everything comes from that. That is number one. How do I want to feel in my life? And how do I want to experience this beautiful life that we're given? And I sit and I marinate in that and I feel it. And then everything has to plug into that vision, not the other way around. And when you're doing that, then you're kind of in some kind of slipstream. You're in your purpose, you're in your dharma, you're able to do less, affect more. right? And help more people. And at the same time, because it's a feedback loop, then you are also supported to be able to do that. That's how it works when we're in the flow. So I know now that if I ever get a block with money, right? Because that was my story that I did for 20 years, 17 years, bankrupt twice. So if I ever get a block with money now, I don't go into panic about it. I look at it as a feedback mechanism. Where am I gripping? Where am I holding on? Not where am I spending too much or where do I need to, I don't do that. It's something in my vibrational state that needs to change. Not something I'm doing, but something that I'm feeling. I know it might sound fluffy and woo-woo, but I'm telling you, it works because that's the truth of who we really are. And we've been trained to do everything from up here, right? Whereas we're now being retrained to do things from here. And that is when we're in full alignment with the universe, with the flow of the universe. It's not going with the flow. Only dead fish go with the flow. You got to show up. It's 50-50.
I love that. Only dead fish go with the flow. Amazing. That sounds, what a journey. So I like how you sort of explain it as well as sort of living between the two worlds, because I think that is quite a challenge, especially if you do start to follow a more spiritual path. It's like we're still living in the 3 or maybe 5 dimension, the third dimension, or we still have to do the everyday stuff. And I'm actually journeying with the gene keys, and Richard Rudd talks about that, how normal in some ways the spiritual path is, like, because we're kind of just living our lives, but there's just like it's a skill, isn't it, to be able to weave those two together. And also, I'm sort of witnessing that there's a potential to want to escape real life to go on the spiritual path, but in fact, and this is something that you talk about, the modern medicine woman. So you're bringing in ancient practice, but you're bringing it into the 21st century. Yeah, I think that, can you talk to that a little bit? I didn't really ask a question. I just said some things.
No, I get what you're saying for sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the, not one of, the biggest support that I've had personally moving through all of this stuff is from beings of the natural world, of the shamanic world. So these traditions that are very, very ancient, but are very simple yet profound in helping us to navigate how we move through the world, and mostly through our relationship with the natural world, and understanding how we were never alone. We've never been alone. We were never meant to be alone. We were never meant to do it all alone. We've kind of been programmed into this feeling of separation, forgetting that the mountains are backing you. The earth is giving you everything that you need. The elements are constantly moving energy in your life. When you have an altar, it's like giving a landing pad for the divine to come and be in your space. So these beautiful practices, and for me, I work mostly with the Andean traditions, and I have done since 2012. And why? Because they are so humble yet so profound, and they work. So sharing these tools with people through the offerings that I do, and the offerings that I also teach nowadays, I teach alongside my teacher, Maestro Puma. And we're really, our mission is to activate that divine memory, that blueprint of the healer within. For me, it's all about self-source. I've just changed the name of my retreats to self-source, because I don't want to be the guru or the teacher that does it for you. What I want to do is give you tools and practices and inspirations and little keys that guide you back to doing it yourself, to trusting your strength, to trusting your wisdom, to trusting your power, to trust your ancient knowing, to trust your healing abilities. You know, Maestro Puma is the first one to say, if I ever say the word your lineage or his lineage, or I personalize it, he's like, no, 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 it's not mine. It does not belong to me. It does not belong to anybody. You know, and that for me, my training in those shamanic traditions was a little different to what we do now. Now we sort of break it down and, you know, give it to people in ways that they can understand it and embody it. But for me, it was like being dropped in the mountains for 10 or 12 hours at a time and told to listen. Go and sit with the mountains, sit on the earth, and then come back and report, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? And it's incredible because, you know, time after time, I'm a real storyteller. I love telling stories. And I could tell you a gazillion stories about different mountains or ancient sites or temples that I know nothing about. I don't watch the Ancient Aliens or the whatever it's called, you know, that go into these places. I purposely don't, because I don't want it sort of tainting my own personal experience of them. And what I download from those places is exactly what the ancestors, you know, the people that are coming. I'm more attuned to what the local people say than what historians say, because they've had that wisdom passed down through generations. But it's been many times too where I've been and done work in a temple, and then someone says, oh my God, there's that show Ancient Aliens. Have you seen it? Go and watch the one on this particular temple. And I do, and it's exactly the same. And why? Because the wisdom, we call it yache in the Andes, it's coded into these places. Like these temples and sacred sites across the planet, not just in the Andes, but everywhere in the world. The temples in Bali, where I live, you know, they are coded, like programmed, like a computer program for certain things. And I believe that that was done by the masters back in the Lemurian or even pre-Lemurian times, because they knew, it was always prophesized in all of these cultures that this time was coming. So they knew that there would be a return of people, of humanity to these sites. And you only have to walk into these places, whether you're aware of it or not, you're going to get the download. It's going to switch something on in you, whether you're conscious of it or not, and you will leave that place different. So yeah, that's the offerings that I do in the Andean traditions that I work with are very, very close to my heart. I know it's weird for me. I look in the mirror, I'm like, what the hell? Like, how did I get put into this skin bag? But I did. And you know, the first time I met Maestro Puma, and he threw the coca leaves, and he's like, oh wow. He said, hang on, just let me check again. And he threw them again. He's like, don't let that blonde hair and blue eyes fool you. He said, you're a medicine woman and these are your mountains. You need to come back here and train. And so I did, you know, and I was in the middle of I had my business, and it was awesome, and it was all the things. And I was like, no, this is, again, you know, against all of the odds and all of the projections of everybody around me. I knew in my heart, it didn't make any sense, that's what I needed to do. So I found a way to do it. And, you know, like I didn't just up and go, you know, like you were saying about how you wanted to escape, bite-sized chunks, small amounts of time, you know, it's incremental. I think that's the thing when you're in that place where you either want to make your passion your work, you know, if you love to facilitate something of some kind and you just want to do that full time, it will come. But if you put too much pressure on that as well at the beginning for that to be your income, or, you know, that you can just leave everything behind and go off and do that, it will come if that's what's meant for you and if that's what you want. But just make it incremental and bring things into your life that anchor, you know, that create that feeling of what it is you're wanting to move forward to. And then before long, you will be having the choices as to which way you want to go. Yep.
How much of this journey is about your own personal evolution? And do you feel like as it unfolds, your story has always been that you need to bring this to more people?
Yes. It's a funny thing. Like, Yeah, I guess a lot of us have this, but this is a funny story. I saw a clairvoyant when I would have been 25, just turned, or maybe just turned 24. It was around that time. And she said to me, within a year, you will be a household name. And I went, what? I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever. I said, I work behind the camera because I was working as a hair and makeup artist. I was like, no, I work behind the camera, not in front of it. And she's like, I am telling you, within 12 months, you will be a household name. And that happened. I ended up on the first series of a TV show called Big Brother, the very first reality TV show ever. And for 12 months afterwards, I literally could not walk into a supermarket without being mobbed. It was mental, right? And then I went on and I continued to work in TV for a while and all the things. So I kind of I had a feeling, I could always feel it in me. It's just a natural desire, I guess, to share. But it was never really aligned back then. It was the opening of it. But that's not what it was about. That was all just preparation to get used to being in front of people, talking in front of people, being able to. I used to love, after Big Brother, they'd get me to go and talk to groups of like women or business women or whatever, and I loved all of that. So what I understand is that everything that has happened until now, and this is not just for me, it's for everyone, has been preparation for now. For the next part. So I kind of always, I've had that innate feeling that is what, and I still feel there's more, but I don't know what that is. I can just feel it in my bones. So again, I'm just guided, and for example, if I put up, just, this is off on a side note, but just to share with people about the level of trust that there is in the process as you're moving through. Like I might have a retreat, right, that I'm offering, that I'm advertising. And if it doesn't fill, then the first thing I'll do is have a look at what needs to change in the retreat, because usually it's something energetic. Something needs to change either in the name, in the format, in the whatever. If I change it and it fills, then I know that it was meant to happen, but it was just that the energetics of it had to shift. There needed to be a different offering, a different process. As I said, it could even be in the name. But if it doesn't fill, I cancel it. If I have to refund money to people, I refund money to people. I don't worry about it. It's not, it's not like, oh my God, this is terrible, I've failed, and people have, no, it's because it's not the right space. It's not the right time. And when you try and push a square peg into a round hole, what's going to happen is it's not good for the people. It's not good for you. You end up in stress. You end up with, all the things. So for me, the level of trust that we need to be working on is really listening and being super authentic with ourselves and super honest and being okay to let things go if we need to. Not easy, but it's a practice. And this is the way, again, I think that we cultivate this ability to really be in the slipstream, and things become much more easy. And also you have more energy because you're not stressing out over things. There's a very fine line between effort and shove, right? You want to give a little bit of a push, but if you find yourself doing that, then it might be, and all the things, when I was in Bali during those pandemic times and I had a ceremony, I had a retreat, I had 16 people. Everyone was paid, everyone was coming, the retreat center I'd paid for, and I'm on my mat doing a yoga practice 2 days before, and I hear this voice come in, cancel it. I'm like, what is the voice of the medicine? What? Cancel it? Cancel it now. And I'm like, why? And it says it's no good for you and it's no good for anybody. And then he went on to tell me about how this was not a time to be opening the veils anymore. It wasn't a time of expansion. It was a time of integration. People needed to pull their energy in, that the guardians were all really busy, and why was I creating more work for them? And yes, you will do this again, but we will tell you when, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how. It was a year and a half. So I had to ring up every one of those people. Hi, sorry, but the medicine's just turned up and told me I have to cancel it. It's like if I'm going to walk my talk, it has to be that level of listening.
Oh my God.
Financially, you're in you don't know when the next thing's coming, and you're refunding 16 people. So it doesn't always make sense, but you got to listen. And then what ended up happening that weekend, there was another event happening somewhere else that didn't get cancelled, that went ahead. And we hadn't had the Rona that badly in Bali, but after that event, there was a huge thing of it. And people got really, really, really sick. So if that could have been one of the reasons that, for me, I could have had been responsible for 16 people going down, whatever, who knows what it was. But when we do that, even though it doesn't make sense because it feels like we're losing something in the moment, what we're actually doing is making a beautiful, big, luscious, cavernous space for something more epic to come in, and more effortless and more easeful and more abundant.
How do you determine between that voice and the voice of the, don't do it kind of? Well, I suppose in that, the fear. I suppose in that circumstance, it's like there'd be a fair bit of fear in cancelling 16 people, or a little bit of a lot of trust. And
it's a good question. It's a good question, because whenever you're about to expand into something more, something bigger, for sure, that voice is coming in, that voice of self-doubt, that voice of fear. It's a different feeling, and you need to learn what that feeling is for you. If it's fear and doubt, which is actually an invitation to step into greatness, then there's usually a lot of mental activity with it. Right? You're thinking, overthinking, going backwards and forwards on it. When it's a clear, when it's a body feeling, and you get, like, for me, I get a very strong feeling in my body of just, oh, that doesn't feel good. And if I visualize it and see myself in it, if I see myself feeling fear, and I'm feeling fear and anxiety around it, then I know that that's the mind. But if there's just a feeling of like, ugh, like it feels like hard work, it feels like effort, it feels like push, then I'm not in the flow. But you need to practice that, and you got to get to know your own signals. But definitely fear and doubt lives up here. Like,
okay.
Whereas the when something is off, you'll know too, because you'll be putting effort into it and it's not moving, it's not going anywhere. So usually in those moments, there's also a fine balance in that too, because sometimes if your energy's disengaged, right, because if you're a bit unsure about it and your energy's disengaged, then things can stop moving a little bit. So what I do is I test it. I put all of my energy into it, I put all of my focus into it, and if it's still stuck, then I know it's a no.
Okay.
Right? It's a no. And whether it's a no because it's not good for you and your body, or whether it's not good for the people, or whether it's just not in alignment, but it's like taking those cues and listening and being okay with it and trusting it,
Yeah. So it's,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's really tapping into your intuition, isn't it? And like trusting that sort of innate ability to do the right thing.
Yes, because we've been conditioned out of that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like the programming and the conditioning of this matrix that we're in takes us out of our superpower, which is our feeling, and takes us into our head, and trying to figure everything out from the ego mind. But actually, the wisdom that can be trusted is the wisdom of the heart. So the heart will never lie, and the heart doesn't speak in long rambling sentences and tons of words. The heart usually speaks in very clear yeses or nos. So a good way to, if you're having trouble tuning into something, is to bring yourself into heart coherence, which basically is just placing a hand onto your heart, taking a few even breaths in, even breaths out, calling into your heart mind somebody that you love or something you're grateful for. And when you feel that moment that you dropped in and you're in restfulness, or relief or expansion, then you ask yourself the question, what does my higher self want me to know now? You know, and you ask the question and you'll get a clear, you'll get a direct answer, and you know it's the heart's answer, because it's like, yes, good idea. No, leave it. Whereas if it's the mind, it's like, and what if you did? And what if you did? And like that. So all these mental gymnastics, right?
Yeah, yeah, good to know. I got a fair bit of that going on a lot of the time.
Me too. Me too. It's normal.
Okay, so let's try and pull all of this together, because you've been really generous with like your experience, and like I think that is such an important part of anyone's journey if they're going to decide to work with someone, knowing who they are and what their experience has been. But you've got a lot of you lot offer a lot of different experiences, retreats. I mentioned at the beginning you've got a 1-year mentorship, which I think is just about to start, or has just started. Just about to start, or has it started now?
Yeah, the Humpy Canoe has started, but we actually have one that's just about to start called Yenanthan and the Humpy Mesa. So this is for balancing the divine masculine and the sacred feminine through the shamanic work of the altar, of the Andean altar. This is beautiful. So the guidance came through really strongly for us to offer this, because, you know, again, as the energy is moving, as we move through different cycles of time and space, the focus needs to shift to be aligned to that. And so now it feels very, very potent to be bringing what we call the Yanantan, the harmonizing of those energies together, and bringing it into a very powerful whole. So that's a program that is open for men and for women. It starts on I'm not sure when this will air, but it's the first lunar moon of this lunar new year, which is February 13th.
Okay.
Yes. Beautiful. I think it's in Aquarius too, which is perfect, because it's that's all about higher wisdom and higher learning and higher knowledge. So full moon, Aquarius, February 13th. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the offerings that you do have, do they kind of change and evolve? Are there certain things that you do, you know, at certain times of the year, or is it really on a, like, what you're being called to do?
Yeah, they change and evolve, and
Okay.
that's because I'm always changing and evolving, so they
Yeah.
are never the same twice. Wilkasuyu, which is the art of ceremonial space and working with cacao as our medicine, that is a beautiful, beautiful apprenticeship. That started at 7 calls over 7 weeks, and now it's 22 calls over 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And in that there's a foundational breathwork training. There's medicine songs. There's somatic movement. Plus, we work with the Andean altar, and we're working very deeply in a dieta with cacao, because she's very sweet, but also very profound medicine when you work with her in that very focused way, to assist people. Because a lot of people are wanting to be in service these days as well. You know, they feel like they want to be creating spaces for people to transform and transcend and alchemize. So that's that. So it's always changing. It's difficult for me, because I always want to give people the upgraded version. So what I do is I kind of keep the base, the foundational stuff in there by having some recorded videos, so that I'm not going too far ahead of myself. So everyone's getting that. And then on the lives we get to play, you know, with all of the up-leveled stuff. And then so the retreats, there's the self-source, which is beautiful deep dives. We're recalibrating the nervous system, preparing the nervous system to receive the deeper insights through the ceremonies. And then we have integration time as well. And then Peru I've been taking groups to Peru since 2013, every year, apart from 2020. So those groups are just next level. They are completely life-changing, super joyful, and because I have all my Andean family there, we really do it as locals, not as tourists. So it's very beautiful.
Who are the people that you are working with, are you working with other people who want to become guides and leaders and coaches in this space, or is it more like individuals that feel like they need that they're going through their own awakening process and need
Oh,
support, that, or is it a bit of both?
that come with us on the Peru journeys, you mean?
Well,
Or anything?
yeah,
Yeah, in general, it's everything.
yeah.
It's everything. Most of the people that come to me are really, well, first of all, they're ready. Everyone that comes is ready. You know, they're this kind of switched on, they're awake, they're aware of what they're working with or wanting to work through. And for me, more and more, what I'm encouraging is for us to be healing through our highest frequency. So it's like, we do the shadow work. I mean, Richard Rudd's the most beautiful for sharing like this. I can't remember the percentages he uses, but I feel the same way. It's like we sit and we observe and we watch and we be with the shadow for 10% of the time, but then we work 90% of the time on developing our whatever our highest frequency is, right? Because really we're kind of like Luke Skywalker with his lightsaber that walks into the meeting, let's call it that, with Darth Vader, knowing that he's got Source at his back and he's got light on his side. So he doesn't avoid the dance or the battle. He goes into it, but he knows who he really is. So, you know, for some people that are coming, some people, I have a lot of repeat people. I have people that have been with me for years. I have some people that are very, very experienced retreat leaders themselves. And they come because they know that the caliber and the quality of the retreats and what people are getting is like the top of the top. And that's how it has to be for me, because I only work with masters. For me, even the people that I pull into my programs to be guest facilitators, I like to do that because I think people really benefit from the wisdom from others, not just me rabbiting on all the time. But I only invite in people that are at the top of what they do, so that you're always getting, you know, the purest, most embodied and ego-free information that you can. There's a lot of spiritual ego out there, as you would know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, right at the beginning, I think that you mentioned, while you were talking about the Schumann resonance and the solar flares, and like just that we're going through this time of intense change. Can you, like, as a bit of a closing, can you kind of bring us into some of the things that you see happening and why, like what this is, what's happening with the, you know, us humans as we do awaken and go through this sort of work and practice, you know, spiritual practice?
Yeah, for sure. I think we are calling our power back. We're calling our energy back. We're calling our souls back. We are activating a divine blueprint. I think that there's been some dormant DNA, that there was something, depending on what you believe or where you think it may have happened. My feeling is it was around 230,000 years ago. Something happened with the DNA where something was shut down and we became kind of, we're on this paradise planet. We're in the jewel of the galaxy. We are on the most special, stunning, beautiful, nourishing place that you could possibly be in this whole multiverse. And yet so many people feel like they're enslaved and imprisoned. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And that control, wherever it's come from or however it's been placed there, has kept us in a slumber. It's kept us asleep. It's kept us believing that that is the glass, that's the ceiling, right? And I feel like as we start awakening, questioning, remembering, feeling, and that's why too, to not be afraid of your feeling, even if the feelings are uncomfortable, because at least you're feeling. The feeling is our superpower, and we've even been taught to be afraid of that. You know, deep depression, deep rest. You're tired, you're exhausted, you've been like carrying that and grinding and, you know, keeping up with the things and all of that crap for so long. You're tired. Give yourself deep rest. Don't be afraid of the shadow of the heavy feeling, you know. It's your superpower. So I feel that once people start to realize, oh my God, this is actually me becoming the truth of who I am. And as that happens, that false matrix, that false program that's been there, they're laughing in the background, I don't know if you can hear them. As that starts to break down, it's going to grip. It's going to grip, and we're going to see in politics and this and that, like they're clinging on for dear life, whatever they can do. So the key to it all is to keep your eye on the prize, know that there is something much, much bigger at play here, and see if you can watch it and witness it without losing your energy to it, without getting too involved in it, and soothe yourself by knowing that for us to break through, first everything has to break down. And the difference is now we're aware of that. Whereas in the past we haven't been. We've just listened and trusted to what we've been fed and think that we have no control. And now we realise, actually it's the other way around, and you just got to watch the cards fall. And they will, and it's happening more and more quickly. And all of these cosmic alignments and events that are happening are all happening now to support that process, you know, to speed it up and to support it and to back it. So I know it can get curly out there, but see if you can stay in the frequency of celebration around it, even when it feels tough, knowing that we're about to pop through into something beyond our wildest dreams.
Wow, that's amazing. Jemma, thank you so much for joining us. That was a beautiful way to close. Yeah, I'm really grateful for you taking the time to share your story with us and about the work, about the work you do in the world.
Thank you so much, Nadine. I'm
No
so
worries.
super grateful. Thank you.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.